Hello and welcome to In Depth. I'm Tina Jha. For the first time in Catholic history, 190 global church leaders have gathered in the Vatican to address the crisis of clergy sexual abuse, described as the most serious crisis in the church since the Reformation. In recent years, stories of abuse have emerged in every corner of the world, and the church has been accused of covering up crimes committed by priests. What's of grave concern is that more than 30 years after the scandal first erupted in Ireland and Australia, and more than 2 decades since it hit the United States of America, bishops and Catholic officials in several parts of Europe, Latin America, Africa, and Asia still either deny that clergy sex abuse exists in their regions or play down the problem. The Vatican Summit convened by Pope Francis in Rome is to raise awareness of the global crisis in parts of the world where the issue of clerical sexual abuse is barely registering. Today's In Depth reflects on the pressing crisis of clergy sex abuse, the scale of the abuse, and the Vatican's action to bring justice to the victims. The Vatican Summit on Sexual Abuse has brought to light many heart-wrenching stories. Survivors of sexual abuse by clergymen have gathered in Rome for the unprecedented 4-day-long summit called by Pope Francis. Many are coming out with their stories after bearing the trauma all their lives. Tales of horror recounted by the survivors of sexual violence at the hands of those who were meant to uphold their faith. After years of sexual abuse by members of the clergy, the survivors are now speaking up. The Vatican Summit, called by Pope Francis against sexual abuse, is giving them hope and a voice.
I was 13 years old when I was abused by a Catholic priest. This has impacted deeply on my life, and I have tried to fix it mainly by helping other people who were abused. This trauma will be with me until the end of my life. You are not alone. It is not your fault. The perpetrator is the only who is responsible. For many, the wounds of the horrific abuse refuse to heal even after years.
I was raped and abused by my parish priest when I was 12 years old. At the time, I froze, didn't say anything, didn't do anything. I was molested for several months and violently raped. I buried the memories for 30 years, or some memories, for 30 years. And it was only when other survivors, other advocates, stood in front of a church and said, there should be no more clergy abuse. And I said, that happened to me.
Repeated sexual violence has left many victims traumatized for life.
It has impacted my life with intimacy issues, with trust issues, combined with feeling like I couldn't say no to people. And that has taken a long time to work through. And I didn't start speaking publicly about this until the last year.
The survivors are standing up for themselves and each other, lighting candles to reinstate their faith. One of the survivors, Alessandro Battaglia, broke down while telling his traumatic story. He was abused at the age of 15 after years of service in the Catholic Church.
The
trauma is too big. Everything takes us back to those painful moments. I stopped believing in God because God would not allow this. I was a Boy Scout. I served as an altar boy. I was an entertainer during church summer camps, and they took this all away. They took years from my life.
Several NGOs are coming forward in support of the survivors, aiming to put an end to this abuse and to lend support to their cause.
If you have evidence and truth that a bishop or a cardinal is covering up for child sex crimes, does it really matter where you get it from? What matters is that you have it now, and you have to act, and you have to do something about it, because another child might be raped or assaulted tomorrow or the next day. That's what matters.
The message of the Vatican Summit is spreading to other parts of the world as well. Survivors holding placards are exposing sexual abuse by priests right outside the Montserrat Monastery in Spain. Nuns in Chile are also hopeful of a change, with Pope Francis' recognition of church abuse.
I told the Mother Superior many times about the fathers who were abusing the nuns. She said we were to blame and that we were the ones who provoked them.
With the Vatican Summit, the Supreme Priest has instilled hope among people who have been wronged and violated by members of the Church. Many of them are beginning to have faith once again that they will get justice. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. The Vatican Summit on Clergy Sexual Abuse is centered around several themes: responsibility, accountability, and transparency. Nearly 200 bishops and Catholic officials are trying to better understand the gravity and urgency of the crisis facing the modern church today. Sexual abuse, exploitation of women, and pedophile priests. The Roman Catholic Church has been rocked by a wave of scandals in recent years. In an effort to deal with the crisis facing the modern church, Pope Francis convened an unprecedented summit of bishops in Rome. The Pope opened a global conference on preventing clergy sexual abuse on 21st February, calling for concrete measures and handing top Catholic bishops a roadmap to tackle pedophilia in the church.
Dinanzi alla piaga degli abusi sessuali perpetrati da uomini di Chiesa a danno dei minori, ho pensato di interpellare voi, patriarchi, cardinali, arcivescovi, vescovi, superiori religiosi e responsabili, affinché tutti insieme ci mettiamo in ascolto dello Spirito Santo e con docilità alla sua guida ascoltiamo il grido dei piccoli che chiedono giustizia. Grava sul nostro incontro il peso della responsabilità pastorale ed ecclesiale che ci obbliga a discutere insieme in maniera sinodale, sincera e approfondita su come affrontare questo male che affligge la Chiesa e l'umanità. Il santo popolo di Dio ci guarda e attende da noi non semplici e scontate condanne, ma misure concrete ed efficaci da predisporre. Ci vuole concretezza.
The Pope offered senior Catholic leaders 21 proposals to punish predators and keep children safe, warning that the faithful are demanding concrete action and not just words. The first of the 21 proposals is that each diocese should have a practical handbook on steps to be taken when cases of abuse emerge. Another proposal was to raise the minimum age for marriage to 16 years. Current canon law in the Catholic Church has the minimum age as 14 for females and 16 for males. The other points include actions such as informing civil authorities of substantial accusations in compliance with local law and making sure non-clerics are involved in church investigations of abuse.
The 21 points given to us by the Holy Father this morning are very important because, first of all, they are a roadmap for our discussion. They are very, very concrete. And so it's an understatement to say that they have to be taken seriously. That's an utter understatement. We're going to discuss those, and even if there are things that have not been discussed enough, they're going to be part of the follow-up to the meeting. It's all about motivation. If you get your motivation right, then everything falls into place. You understand what you need to do, and you realize what and how you get it right. If you don't have the right motivation, then it's going to be, either fake or it's not going to be effective.
On the first day of the summit, the Pope and the almost 200 participants in a Vatican auditorium watched a video of 5 victims who wished to remain anonymous, telling painful stories of abuse and cover-up. These included victims from 5 continents: Europe, Africa, Asia, South America, and North America. They told the bishops of the trauma of their abuse and the additional pain the church's indifference caused them. Acknowledging that cover-ups of sexual abuse cases inflicted wounds on victims, Cardinal Louis Tagle of the Philippines broke into tears while reading a keynote speech on the first day of the sexual abuse conference.
The wounds of the risen Christ carry the memory of innocent suffering, but they also carry the memory of our weakness and sinfulness. If we want to be agents of healing, let us not reject any tendency that is part of worldly thinking that refuses to see and touch the wounds of others, which are Christ's wounds in the wounded people. Those wounded by abuse and the scandal need to be strong in faith in this moment.
Indian Cardinal Oswald Gracias termed sexual abuse of minors perpetrated by members of the Catholic clergy a public criminal behavior, adding that it must be reported to civil authorities.
Those who are guilty of criminal behavior are justly accountable to civil authority for that behavior. Although the Church is not an agent of the state, the Church recognizes the legitimate authority of civil law and the state. Therefore, the Church fully cooperates with civil authorities in these matters to bring justice to survivors and to civil order.
The unprecedented event at the Vatican was organized in response to a new spate of scandals in the United States, Chile, and elsewhere, which exacerbated the Catholic Church's decades-old pedophile priest crisis. Pressure has been building up on the Pope to provide leadership and generate workable solutions to the most pressing crisis facing the Catholic Church. The first of its kind conference on sexual abuse at the Vatican was convened by Pope Francis after discussions with the C9, which is the group of 9 cardinal advisors who were appointed soon after the Pope was elected. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. So at a time when the Catholic Church is facing a tide of sexual abuse allegations, many people are asking why similar complaints in India are being met with silence. Nuns in Kerala have led several protests on behalf of a fellow nun who was allegedly raped 13 times by a bishop who has denied the charges. Let's look at some of the cases that have triggered anger among people. India too has had its share of sexual abuse scandals involving the Catholic Church. On 16 February, a senior Catholic priest was sentenced to 20 years in prison for raping a 16-year-old girl in Kerala. The incident came to light only after the victim gave birth in February 2017. Robin Vadagumcheri, 51 years old, was found guilty of raping the underage girl. He was handed down 3 concurrent sentences of 20 years each for rape and sexual abuse. The case also brought to light the complexities of dealing with such cases that involve religion and the clergy. Reports said that the victim's father attempted to direct the focus away from the convicted priest by initially telling the police that he was the father of his daughter's baby. Later, during the trial, the girl, her father and her mother also claimed that the baby was the result of a consensual relationship between the victim and the priest, and the girl was an adult at that time. The court, however, rejected the documents which were furnished to corroborate the claim, ruling that they had all been falsified. Under the IPC, any sexual encounter with a minor under 18 years of age automatically becomes ground for a rape charge. In another case, a group of women who spoke out about the alleged sexual abuse of a fellow nun claimed they were under pressure to withdraw their support for her. Activists claim many cases go unreported, but the Summit on Sexual Abuse in the Vatican City leaves room for hope that awareness on the issue of sexual abuse will increase not just in India but across the globe. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. And time for a short break on the program. We'll be right back. Watch News Tonight at 9 p.m. with me, Tina Jha.
Today we'll take a closer look at government's decision to widen the startup definition.
The listed companies can now invest without any particular limit, as long as they like. It can. A lot of large companies who are sitting with their money, they can look at investing in startups, and there is no limit at all.
That if you want to flourish the startup industry, you have to give them level playing field with other countries, Singapore, Mauritius. You have to give the level playing field. No?
This is a welcome step in right direction. This will make it easy to do business. And startup, as you know, it carries lot of risk. We are talking about innovations. Innovations means lot of risk. It may happen, it may not happen.
For centuries, Delhi has been known for waterworks, given the vast number of kingdoms in the city. Among the earliest ones was a dam at Anangpur village, the city believed to be built by Rajput king Anangpal Tomar. This unique Indian hydraulic engineering structure was built around 8th century, running 50 meters long and standing 7 meters high. This dam was more of a water harvesting structure meant to store rainwater during the monsoon season. Located close to Anangpur village lies Surajkund, the waterworks which is regarded as among Delhi's first organized reservoir. Built in the shape of rising sun with an eastward arc, it's enclosed with a steep embankment made in semicircular shape of stepped stones. These reservoirs took care of need of the city at the time of the shortage of water, given Delhi's topography and warm weather spells. Also, once existed a magnificent sun temple near the Surajkund reservoir.
सरकारी बैंकों की सेहत में सुधार, इस सुधार से कारोबार और आम नागरिक को क्या फायदा होगा, जानने के लिए देखिए अर्थनीति मेरे साथ शनिवार शाम 7:30 बजे।
Welcome back. You're watching In Depth. Sexual abuse in the Catholic Church goes back a long way. So do the attempts to document it and enact legislations against the crime committed by the clergy. But in several instances, the power enjoyed by the clergy and immunity provided by religion led to crimes being ignored and the victims being deprived of the much-awaited justice. Roman Emperor Constantine is said to have officially recognized the Catholic Church in the early 4th century. The recognition turned the religious leaders or the clergy into a separate privileged class. It also laid the seeds for the abuse of power and laws attempting to impose a check on them and prescribe punishment. According to some reports, the earliest recorded church legislation is from the Council of Elvira in Spain in 306 AD. Half of the canons passed dealt with sexual behavior of one kind or another. Penalties were imposed for clerics who committed adultery or fornication. Although there were no specific mention of homosexual activities by the clergy, the early council reflected the church's official attitude towards same-sex relationships. Men who had sex with young boys were deprived of communion even on their deathbed. Similar gatherings of bishops throughout the Christian world, from Western Europe, North Africa, the Middle East and the British Isles, also passed laws to curb sexual offences. The most dramatic condemnation of clergy sexual activity was the Book of Gomorrah of St. Peter Damian. The book was completed in 1051. It is a reflection of sexual abuse in modern times. St. Peter Damian begins by singling out church superiors who failed to take action in sexual abuse cases. The author asserts that those given to unclean acts should be dismissed from holy orders. He also speaks with contempt of clerics who abused men or boys who came for confession. Similar contempt was also reserved for clerics who sexually abused victims and then prescribed penance for them. The author also refutes the canonical defense that clerics guilty of sexual abuses often gave. Medieval scholars have also written accounts of clerical sexual abuse. They mention adultery, casual sex with unmarried women, and homosexual relationships with young boys. They mention adultery, casual sex with unmarried women, and homosexual relationships with young boys. These scholars also prescribe that punishment for sexual transgressions by clerics should be more severe than for laymen. But evidently such advice was ignored, given the power that the church and its officers wielded. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. And that's it from us in this edition of In Depth. You can also watch our episodes online on YouTube and Twitter and get back to us with your feedback and suggestions. Thank you very much for your time.